All right, what's up, everybody? I'm back again with another review. This is the Bay Area's only toy reviewer, Carl, and I am back again today with another review. This is the DC Universe SUPERDOOM. All right, a little backstory on this character. I guess evidently Superman somehow got infected with Doomsday as a result of killing him, I think. You have to excuse me, I do apologize. I don't really read comics that much, but I do sort of keep up with the stories, but not enough to know the integral details of how certain things happen. But I guess in the comic books, it was significant enough to make a figure out of it, so here it is. This is Super Doom. Because Superman needs more power. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'm not a Superman guy, but I understand why people like Superman, and I appreciate Superman for what he is, or should I say what he stands for. What he stands for. But I'm not really a Superman guy. I believe this is the second Superman figure that I own, aside from the Dark Knight Returns Superman. But let's get into the and speaking of the Dark Knight Returns Superman, let's get into the articulation. His arm goes around 360, goes out to about there. I feel like it would go out a little bit further if it didn't have this spike right here, but I don't think so because the hinge stops right there. It's got a bicep swivel that goes around 360. The same for the other side. Wrist swivel. Also, he has a lack of accessories. Both Superman doesn't really need any, but I wish that instead of having claw hands, he had fist, or maybe came with, I don't know, an additional set of hands, but then they'd have to change this whole gimmick here, but that's fine. He has a abdominal hinge that gets you back to about there, forward to about that much, what gives him the sort of hulking booty look. Moving down the figure, he has a waist swivel that gets it around 360. Now, I've mentioned this before, and I really like this, and I'm glad they decided to do this with this guy, because they could have changed it aesthetically, but they didn't do that. So, I don't think there's no hinge there. But what they did was they put the trunks over the hinge so that way you don't see it as much. So that way it looks seamless. I really do like that. Going down the figure, he's got a super kick that goes out to about there. Goes back to about that much. Goes out about that far. Young Bucks. Super kick party. Single jointed knee that gets you back to about there, which isn't a lot. Oh, he also has a single jointed elbow too on top of that. Got a foot, ankle pivot, gets you about up to there. Back to about there. No ankle rocker, no calf swivel, but he does have a thigh swivel. So there's a peg that goes into his thigh and swivels, but it's hidden by the trunks, which I really like. Cape looks good. It's got the S on the back, black. The cape is very malleable, so it can get out of the way really easy. It does flex back, but it gets out of the way pretty easy, which is really nice. You don't got to really worry about that. Now the head. The head does go around 360, but it's hindered by his chin. It's hindered by his big-ass chin. Now, getting into the aesthetics of how the head looks. Let me see if I could move this around a little bit. I think the head sculpt looks really good. I really do. I think it looks nice. I think the lines are where they should be. The teeth look great. That's something that they easily could have gotten wrong. They could have just whiffed it on the teeth. They could have just threw a bunch of paint in there, called it a day, but they didn't do that. I think that there is a slight shading. Yes, there is. There's a slight shading difference underneath the eye here in relation to the rest of the face. There's a lot of good line work in there. See if I can focus. It's a lot of good line work in there. looks really good. The hair looks rustled and messed up, which really shows the change, the difference in appearance from him and Superman. The only thing I wish that they would have sharpened up on is the chin spikes. The chin spikes, they sort of phoned it in a little bit. It's just paint just on top of gray plastic. But other than that, the head sculpt looks great. I think it's the best, most distinguishing feature on the figure itself. The S looks good. Nice and sharp lines. Though I wish the S would have been messed up just a little bit more to show the difference between Superman and SUPERDOOM. But I'm glad they didn't do some cheesy thing like put a D instead of an S or something crazy like that. Like they would have done that in the 90s. They would have done that. Totally would have done that in the 90s. But aside from that, I mean, the figure... Okay, so here's the thing. I like the figure because it's a sculpt and it's a mold that has been used before, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I like the fact that the pegs are hidden, and they've done this before, though that gets a little unsightly. But you turn them to the side. At certain perspectives, you can't see it as much. But he doesn't really get a lot of articulation in the legs. But the base body sculpt we've seen before in another figure, which I will show. My issue with this guy is, and I'm once again, and I'll reiterate this again, I'm not a paint guy, but I wish that they would have done a little something with all this blue here. Because the blue, I don't want to say it looks cheap, but they could have made it, I don't know, like a deeper blue, or maybe added in some gray accents to like maybe the biceps, the arms, something. It's just blue. And the blue by itself makes it look cheap. And it doesn't make it look as imposing or as fearsome as something like a SUPERDOOM should be. It's the combination of both Doomsday and Superman. It should be the scariest thing you've ever seen. And I feel like I don't really get that. It feels like Saturday morning cartoons. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it feels like. I wish they would have added in just a little bit more of a darker blue, maybe some gray, maybe some black, maybe some additional hands. But other than that, I mean, it's a cool figure. I mean, it is what it is, and I hate that expression, but I like it a lot. But here he is next to the Dark Knight Returns Superman, and you can see how the sculpts are similar, but you can also see how the sculpts are different. I wish that this blue was on this guy. You know what I mean? And there are certain things, engineering things, that are superior with him as opposed to him. It's not just they just took this guy's head and his arms and then put it on this body. They actually did change they actually took some things away from this guy, which in my opinion makes him a little bit inferior to this one. But you can see how they use the base. Unless you're a diehard fan of this incarnation of Superman, I say pass. He's not something that you necessarily need in your life or need on your shelf. This version of him was a momentary thing that they resolved fairly quickly. I think so. Once again, I'm not really sure. I don't really read comics that much these days. But it's a momentary thing, and I say pass, but if you like rare stuff, or you could have this on your shelf and you can look at it and say, man, remember that time that Superman became Doomsday, the embodiment of everything that he's against, then okay, I say go for it. But if you're not a diehard fan of this, then I say no. But that's the final verdict. I mean, I got him because he was on the cheap. And, you know, it's always cool, I guess, to have like a bad guy Superman that can fight against your heroes in a photo, because that's rare. Unless you start getting into like Otherworld and things like that, but that's a completely different thing. But I say pass on this guy. Unless you're a diehard fan. So that's a review. So this is the Bay Area's only toy reviewer, Carl. And I will see you guys next time.